This lecture is on the body paragraph and transitions. In order to address the body paragraph, let us return to the basic format, the basic framework of an academic paper. Here we note the basic framework. It includes the introductory paragraph, where we tell our audience what it is exactly we're about to address, where we make a claim. It also includes the concluding paragraph, where we summarize our points and establish the relevance of the work in general and to a larger audience. The majority of your paper should be comprised of body paragraphs. These are the meat and organs of your paper. They make the blood flow. They make the work live. They are an essential part of your work. Without the body paragraphs, you are merely making a claim which may be reasonable or may be entirely ludicrous. Your body paragraphs prove the stipulations of your introductory paragraph. It's like when someone says to you, pictures or it didn't happen. Think of body paragraphs as those pictures. For example, it is very easy for me to claim that I worked at Summit Station at the top of the Greenland ice sheet. But pictures or it didn't happen. Or that I slept in a tent in sub-zero temperatures at Summit Station at the top of the Greenland ice sheet. Pictures, or it didn't happen. Or that I was nearly killed by a polar bear. Pictures, or it didn't happen. These images provide evidence that support my claim. Evidence is important to any claim. I have other evidence I might provide for these claims. The testimony of my colleagues, my own narrative, the one I wrote the day of the event when we were all trapped inside of one of the few hard structures on station. That might be evidence. The teeth and tongue I cut out of the bear's jaws after we shot her, which we then sent to the scientists who track and catalog bear activity in the Arctic. That might be evidence. My plane tickets, patches from the different units I worked with, the several news reports that resulted from the event, and official government documents that support my claims. These are all evidence that support my claim. Say, for instance, that I make the following claim. Polar bear incursions into remote science stations are increasing, largely due to the fact that climate change is altering the natural coastal habitat and changing the behavior of aquatic mammals. This is a thesis statement. Remember the pictures I showed you and the list of potential evidence I just mentioned. Each image might represent a paragraph. Due to the fact that I am addressing climate change and its effect on the habitat of aquatic mammals in the Arctic, I have opened up the possibilities for evidence even further. Scientific papers, meteorological data, the supported claims of others, the testimony of experts, even our shared experience of climate change in our country, our state, our community, and experiences from around the world. The possibilities for evidence here are enormous. By noting my own experience, I am anticipating questions or counterarguments. Somebody might raise their hand and say, but polar bears only live in the coastal areas of the Arctic. They do not travel hundreds of miles over land. How could they possibly be a danger to scientists in the middle of the Greenland ice sheet? And I would answer, I worked as a logistics operator supporting research at Summit Station. which is situated at the summit of the Greenland ice sheet. Here, let me show you evidence supporting this claim. This is Summit Station. That structure is called the Big House. We have to lift it every season because the ice beneath is continually melting, due in part to climate change. This might represent a body paragraph, just the description of this. These are the tents that some of us slept in. These are called Arctic oven tents, and this image, the description thereof, might also represent a body paragraph. And this was our polar bear. The introduction of this new subject might also represent a body paragraph. These pictures partially support my thesis. They also act as an appeal to ethos. I can talk about this subject because I have direct experience of it. Someone else might note, but none of these pictures show a bear at Summit Station. They just show a bunch of tents and a structure on stilts and a bear. They could all be anywhere. And I might reply, funny you should note that. Here is a picture of the polar bear that arrived on station one morning. See, those are the tents some of us slept in, and those are the outhouses. This picture was taken from the safety of the Big House. This is the middle of the Greenland ice sheet, and there's a bear. There shouldn't be a bear there. They live on the coast, but there she is. We were trapped inside the Big House for 2 days. Then we shot her, and I removed her teeth and tongue for the scientists to study. Then we buried her out behind the skiway where the C-130s land and deliver our personnel and supplies. For real though, that's the tent I was caught in. They had to distract the bear so I could escape. All this happened the summer before last. Let's go back to the body paragraph. The body paragraph is comprised of a subject, a point of evidence, and a sentence that describes the relevance of the evidence to the thesis statement. Subject, evidence, relevance. The subject portion, as with any part of a paragraph, might be more than one sentence. And a paragraph might be necessarily more than 3. The subject of a paragraph will express what the paragraph is about to address. It might begin with the template, they say, I say. Again, it might be more than one sentence, and it might contain a transition. Let's talk about transition sentences. A transition sentence will appear at either the beginning or the end of your paragraph. They act as signals or signposts to your audience. You might think of them as landmarks on a journey. You are guiding your audience through your writing. You are in charge. You have the authority. Like a signal or a landmark, a transition sentence will remind the audience of the subject of what came in the paragraph just before or inform them of what will come in the next. If the transition sentence appears within the subject portion or first 1 or 2 sentences of a paragraph, it will reference material in the paragraph that came just before. If the transition sentence comes in the relevance portion, or at the end of the paragraph, it will address the subject of what is coming next. We can look at a few examples. Let's look at something you've already read. This is from George Orwell's essay, Why I Write. Look at the last sentence of the excerpt. And the more one is conscious of one's political bias, the more chance one has of acting politically without sacrificing one's aesthetic and intellectual integrity. Considering that he mentions in those two sentences, what might he talk about in the next paragraph? I think he might talk about politics and aesthetics, also known as art. Let's see what he writes about next. What I have most wanted to do throughout the past 10 years is to make political writing into an art. My starting point is always a feeling of partisanship, a sense of injustice. Let's look at another example. This one is a little more difficult, so I've bolded the portions in his transition sentences of what is about to come next. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. writes in Letter from Birmingham Jail, "It was practiced superbly by the early Christians who were willing to face hungry lions and the excruciating pain of chopping blocks before submitting to certain unjust laws of the Roman Empire. To a degree, academic freedom is a reality today because Socrates practiced civil disobedience." He has mentioned both unjust laws and disobedience. What might the next paragraph entail? Perhaps legality, illegality? We can never forget that everything Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. But I am sure that if I had lived in Germany during that time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers, even though it was illegal. If I lived in a communist country today, where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I believe I would openly advocate disobeying those anti-religious laws. Notice how he guides his audience into his next thought. These are transition sentences. He has combined them with the subject and relevance portion of each paragraph. Let's go back to the body paragraph format. I want to look at evidence. Evidence is dangerous because it might be irrelevant, false, or you might simply handle it poorly. It should support your argument, your claim, your thesis statement. The evidence you provide in the form of quoted material must begin or end with your words. Do not use drive-by or hit-and-run quotations. The proper way to format your quoted evidence is as follows. Blank writes, then the quote, close quotations, then the citation, close parentheses, then the punctuation, or something like this. According to blank, then the quote, close quotation marks, then the citation, close parentheses, then the punctuation. Let's go back to the body paragraph. Subject, evidence, relevance. I want to look again at relevance. Relevance explains why the evidence you just provided matters to your claim. It might begin, again, with they say, I say. It states, perhaps, how it helps to prove your thesis statement and might also contain a transition, as we have seen in the examples I just provided. Remember your basic format for your papers from here on out. I will be expecting this from you in each of your papers. Introductory paragraph, hook, plan, thesis, body paragraphs, subject, evidence, relevance, concluding paragraph, thesis, and then answer the questions, so what, and who cares? That's it. That's your lecture. Email me if you have any questions.